Let's roll. This is Countercharge, your podcast for ranks, flanks, and kings of war. Join your hosts as they delve into the world of Panithor and bring you worldwide coverage of all things Kings of War.
Well, welcome to Countercharge. It's Kakwah.
I'm Stephen Devenish.
And I'm Matt Croger. Welcome. Tonight you're going to hear from the three of us about our first experiences with a small little casual tournament of Fourth, which I think was the first in the world. You know, I'm sure someone will very kindly tell me if I'm wrong. There's no doubt I'll be let know, but we had 13 players at a small one-day event in Canberra, HawkCon, which we hold every year for our local gaming group, and we had 3 games at 2,000 points preparing for Clash of Kings Australia. It was my second game of Fourth. I know, Steve, you'd been doing a bit of testing, so you'd probably played a few games, but what game number was it for you?
Probably played about, by the start of the game, probably half a dozen games.
Yeah, okay. And Steve?
Probably a similar number, actually, 5 or 6.
Yep. Yeah, nice. Yeah, and so I think, zooming ahead, the end of the tournament, pretty much, I think all 13 were saying very positive things about Fourth. And I think pretty much unanimously saying, they're quite prepared to say that we've got a better game on our hands and, maybe a little bit of tweaking here and there, but that it's looking very positive for the future. But before we roll into a little bit more, let's do some hobby updates. Steve, you doing any hobby at the moment, mate? I know I'm printing for you, which is almost finished.
Yeah, getting back on the Salamander bandwagon. Thanks for printing. So painting up some rhinosaurs at the moment, getting a battle captain on Rhinosaur ready. Thinking of taking him to Clash and hoping to get some Commodons and Gakotas from you soon, Matt, and we'll see if they're ready by late January.
Yeah, nice. Well, the models are definitely ready. It's just whether your painting speed will be up to scratch.
No chance, but we'll try. Yeah.
What about you, Kak? What are you up to, mate?
Well, I jumped on the Zakali bandwagon, so I'm about halfway through, I'd say, putting together a Zakali army, painting it. So in the last week, I've done 3 units of Yams, 3 units of Spear Wardens, a Shack, a couple of characters, and halfway through a few other units. So getting through it.
And do you feel pretty powerful playing the best army in the game now, mate? Or
mate, it's really it. You can't lose with it. Like you just push it forward. You just win.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard anyway.
Yeah, that's what you've heard. Exactly. What you've heard and experienced might differ. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and for myself, I'm printing madly for tokens and things for Clash and resin printing, for you, Steve, and I'm doing some Gekatar or, I've got to look up how they spell it, Gekatar and a Commodon and a whole bunch of other things, some Lancers as well. So I'm on that, but I've also started assembling some Trident Realms. I've got the Zergs coming, but I thought, well, there's going to be a few Zergs knocking around. Maybe I'll start up some Trident Realms instead because I had the Mega Army. So you
handicapped yourself from a gaming point of view, thought you'd run something a bit underpowered.
Exactly. Exactly. They do look to be a very, very good list. I think a lot of good strength in core, unlike a lot of armies. I think they're... a lot of armies kind of the core feels somewhat of attacks, but in Trident Realms, it definitely feels like it's strength. But, I'm certainly not going to go an all depth horror route. I'll be trying to do something more interesting than that.
Well, you've got to get some tidal storms in there as well, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting how long before we get an update on that. I'm assuming not much. I was just going through my... Clash. I know. I was going through my pack and going, I did say any changes before 24th of December, so maybe I need to make a specific ruling on tidal swarms. We'll see.
I give you the first week of January, see if they come back from holidays and hot fix anything.
They because it definitely cannot be a correct stat line.
No, it's not.
No, and I think most of the correct numbers are in there. They're just not in there in the right order.
Well, I think they're copied from the previous entry, right? For the title swarm. They're the depth orders,
something
right?
like that. Yeah, something like that. I mean, I have to say that has been one thing that I found a bit disappointing with the update is the amount of errors that aren't necessarily book related but are companion related. With electronic files and things these days, I wouldn't have thought it'd be that hard to check it off. But so, it gives people who are doing things like running tournaments a bit more of an issue where, do you run with what the book is? Do you run with what the companion is? It makes it very challenging. But, anyway.
Yeah, I think anything you've got a living document, the companion has to be the Bible, and if it's not right, it makes it hard, doesn't it?
Makes it very hard. So, hopefully that's all tidied up shortly. But yeah, because unfortunately it's the same time. It's the same thing every time there's an update. So I'm not sure how copy and paste doesn't work. But anyway, we'll move on. The only thing that I'd like to say before we get into our main topic is, Clash of Kings Australia tickets are still selling. We've cracked or smashed through, I think, the 40. We've had a few late entries. We're getting towards 45. You may have seen the video of, the live stream of me saying that Ronnie's coming along, and Ronnie joined us for that. I got sent a very interesting video by Mr. Steve Hildrew that was meant to be a promotional video for Clash of Kings with him and Steve, but it was deemed not fit for public consumption. So that's just my own little viewing pleasure there now.
Might have to pick that one over, mate.
Yeah. So, hopefully everyone can come along and have a good time. So it's not too late. Jump on there, get registered, and we'll all have a great time come the end of January. So it's what are we, the 2nd today? So we're only just over 3 weeks away. It's getting a bit scary. Yeah, you have got some painting to do, Steve. I'll have to make sure they get there for Monday night for you, mate, for games night.
Oh, please, yes.
Yeah,
no excuses.
They're done. I think the last ones are literally sitting on the printer finished, so I've just got to get them washed up for you. So, yeah. And then it's up to you.
Yeah, I don't know how much free time I'm going to have starting work on Monday, but we'll see.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, nice. All right. Well, let's roll into our main topic. So I thought we'd get us together and have a bit of a chat about our first experiences of fourth, and particularly some of the difference we experienced. I thought some of the ideas I put down are, I guess a little chronological and how they are different within the game, and what you might notice first. But the first thing I think that has changed significantly, which everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people were basically crying out for, was this change in list building. And so, now we have this battalion system at 2,000 points, recommended that it's one battalion. So that's what we've gone with for Clash and what we played with on the weekend. Kak, overall, maybe give us a rundown of the Zerkali list that you took on the weekend, just what's in it, but then have a chat about, I guess, how list building feels different and what you found you've had to do compared to third.
Yeah, look, I think overall, our sort of local play group, we've been very happy with it. It's probably outside of maybe Trident Realms is the only one that sort of doesn't really feel like it. It pushes you into sort of that the core specialist support brackets. It sort of feels a little bit free for all, but everything else, like I go through the list I've built, but the Zerkali seem to have their bottleneck a little bit in specialist. I'd love an extra specialist slot, but every list has got a little bit of flavour. But I'll go through. I also run a Matriarch, a Beastmaster with an Inspiring Talisman. Then I've got a core of 4 Spear Warden regiments. Then I've got 3 Yan Warrior Monks, little 120-point sort of Berserker troops. 1 Lion Style Cavalry with a Staying Stone, and a Goth Glue. This is the list I ran on the weekend.
Did you only take 1 Lion Snail regiment?
Yeah, just 1 Lion Snail. Look, the Yans are the star of the show, to be honest. The Lion Snail are very good, but I don't know. I don't think they're quite as good as people are making out. I think there's other options. Like, I think you take Man Beast Cabs, probably every bit as good as they are. They got Fly, they got Crush 2 instead of the Thunder 2. I know you haven't got the Strider Aura, but even the Strider Aura you do have, you got a Speed 5 bloke you're trying to run along behind him, putting it on him.
Yeah, I think the Lion style, I mean, their one drawback is they're very expensive, right? 270 points for the regiment. And particularly when we're talking about at 2,000 points, that's a significant chunk when you've paid, a reasonable tax for your heroes. Although you only took, like in my list, CAC, you only took the 2 inspiring. Tell me about that. Was that more around because you felt face value, you felt that's all you needed, or was it more just because you're paying a fairly hefty tax that you thought you didn't want to waste too much on the heroes?
Most lists we've been writing have ended up around the 2. You'd really love a third one. But again, it's obviously outside of your rats and goblins and things where you get access to sort of really cheap characters. It's just finding the points and the room for it is tricky. The advantage I got as a Carly is the matriarch is a very inspiring character. So that sort of covers the majority of battle line, and in that list, the Goklu is self-inspiring. So one flank sort of looks after itself. Matriarch covers the centre, and then the Beastmaster follows the line style carried along. So in this list, it's okay. But yeah, 2 feels very much the minimum. You'd love 3, I think, in most lists that we've been playing with. But at 2,000 points, it's pretty tight.
Yeah, I think some lists have a bit of an advantage, like Halflings, for example, where you can take the Battle Pig, that also has inspiring. So
that'd be the only advantage Halflings have got, I think.
Yeah. So you get that option, so you don't have to take 3 champions. Because I mean, it's been discussed a lot. There's a premium on your champions, but
Sure.
I felt
I think lists that have got access to it like that, like I think Sally's with Ancients have got it, and like a low-high list like that, I think that's going to be a fantastic ability to be able to take it in a list.
100%. Yeah, I definitely felt light with 2, compared to the Halfling list I'd run previously. Did you find, there's been a lot of chat on the internet about, and this can go to both of you, we might start with you, Steve. Did you find 2,000 very restrictive? Because there's been a lot of chat about going up to 2,500, and I think that's namely around paying more for characters. I think the more points, the more battalions. Like, I personally like having to make sacrifices in list building, and I don't buy into the, we should just have bigger points so we get all the toys that we want and to make the perfect list. I think weaknesses in lists make for a good game. How did you find having the lower point game, or lower, I guess, even compared to what a lot of games were in third? How do you find that, Steve, with list building?
Yeah. I mean, it creates a different kind of challenge, right? Because everyone's in the same boat. So I'm playing with less toys, but so is my opponent. And so trying to still cover the bases, it didn't feel like an ambush list. Like, it didn't feel like you had to kind of go one-dimensional in any one thing. It still felt like a full army, but not. I agree. You had to make sacrifices. I managed to fit 3 Inspirers in my 2,000 points, but compared to what I was taking to Masters or some of the other 2,000 point tournaments last year, there was a lot less toys on the table.
What about yourself, Kak? How did you find it?
Yeah, look, I've sort of, even in the old money, I probably preferred 2,000 points over 2,300 a lot of the time. 2,000 now probably does feel a little tight. I think we'll probably end up in the wash at 22, 2,300, something like that. But again, I'd rather the little bit of pressure where you've got to make choices. I think 2,500, you sort of can do it all. Loses a bit of the fun.
Yeah, I think a couple of arguments I would buy into is that at the lower points when we're, and I didn't know this when I made the decision for Clash, I just made it on the decision of 2,000 might buy people more time to get used to rules. But with the new army building, it probably does make it harder to maybe fit some people's existing armies into that new structure, because you have to do it potentially in a different way if people haven't built their armies in, say, smaller regiments or troops or whatever. And the other thing, maybe at the lower points, things like the Trident Realms or whoever have better core, maybe that's a little bit more powerful because they're not so much paying a tax. But I still think, it's a wash. My vibe so far has been, I think there's no doubt there is some imbalance between armies, but I think it's a bit overblown about how big a deal it would be. Like, I think the really good players, like yourself, Steve, you could probably win. You could win a lot of games without even using command orders. That a lot of the command orders, there's some very good ones, but I don't think they're necessary to win games. So a little bit of imbalance in that is not that big a deal.
Yeah, Kings of War is still basically a movement game, and being able to apply pressure at the right time. So command orders are nice; they give a bit of flavour, but they don't break the game in any way. I was just going to say a counterpoint to wanting to have bigger lists is also how the core works now. So at least for myself with the salamanders, the core's all changed. You can't use the rhinosaurs to unlock things. You can't use the tyrants. So actually having enough core to be able to feed into the specialist and support and characters is another factor. So you don't want to make it too big either necessarily. It kind of works. The stress works both ways.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into another thing that I saw on, how good's Fnatic's been recently, just quietly. But
very calm.
Another thing on Fanatics, where I saw something about, this switches X into core and then doesn't give, but the commands don't work on it because that's a special trait. And I'm kind of like, they're two different mechanisms. The commands are there, particularly in these main book armies. They're a little bit generic. They're there to support what's in the core as written, generally, and sometimes the wider army. Whereas the special character that changes the thing is intended to change list design, and give people opportunities to do something a bit more thematic or something like that. They're two different mechanisms. Sure, sometimes they play together, sometimes they don't. I don't think we can expect that everything is always going to work perfectly together, hand in hand.
No, there's some wild takes on them, mate.
Yeah, definitely. Steve, actually, why don't you, before we get on, why don't you tell us what you took in your list?
Sure. So, as I mentioned before, I managed to find, I was able to put in 3 Inspirers. So, Warlord Firebrand, who didn't unlock, but made 2 regiments of Corsairs core. Then for the fun picks, I took Artackle and I don't know how to pronounce it, Zaki, the fireball with piercing guy. 2 regiment of primes. So there's 3 core there. Another troop of primes, which is great for extra fireball from the commands. 3 units of fire elementals. 1 regiment and 2 troops, and 2 greater fire elementals. And those greater fire elementals did a lot of work. They're expensive, but they are mini tanks.
Saki sounds like a bit of Artackle,
I guess so. He's a little bit different.
Ars tackle, maybe.
Maybe he's trying something a little bit different to Artackle.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good example of leaning into something where those special characters have helped you change up the list design, right?
Yeah.
That's certainly something I found looking at the Salamander list. Is I've now gone, I need to keep on printing, and just because there's so many options available to you that are decent lists.
100%.
And, they're in the main book, and I think it seems that the list is, I would say, healthier than some of the other armies in terms of having those options. But yeah, I look at it now and I go, I kind of wouldn't mind having like 5,000 points worth of options, so I can just do whatever I want on a given day with Salamanders. I think they've done. I think Salamanders is a good example, and the Zerkali are a good example of how these lists should be moving forward. I think maybe there's a little bit of error in the Trident Realms, but I think those two are good examples.
Look, I was going to say Sallies too. Oh, sorry, man. I say in the Sallies, like the fire stuff in particular. Like I've got an old Sallies army that I sort of haven't had out for very long, and looking at this new fire stuff and the way you can put together some of the greater fire elementals, and I think you can move the fire elementals to core with a character, and you can do some really cool lists, I think.
It's one of my favourite new mechanics, actually, is being able to switch things out to core. Not so keen on the ones that go from support to specialist, because there's niche cases where that doesn't actually help you. But the ones that bring it into core, like Firebrand, Artackle, forget the other ones, the fire guy's name, who brings the fire elementals into core. They're really helpful. I mean, you could call it attacks. Harath. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
They just add another level, so you can really hone in on those themes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, the interesting thing with Harath is that it designates it has to be regiments of fire elementals that come into core. It doesn't allow you to bring the troops in.
I think it's the same with most of them.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense when most of the smaller versions of units are auxiliary in the core, doesn't it? So that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I like it because you basically get these options now that if you wanted to, for thematic reasons or game reasons, that you can build a mixed list, you could build a normal salamander heavy list, you could build a Gekatar list, you could build a flame list. You just got so many options. I think it's a fantastic list.
At the same time, the command orders also encourage you to have a bit of a mix there. So if you lean too heavily into a theme, you'll find some of your command orders won't work. Like if you don't have enough primes or other salamanders, you won't be able to get the fireball off the command. I forget the name of it. So it encourages that little bit of a mix of things, but you can still have strength.
Yeah, the interesting thing is they did get one less command order than the other armies. And I assume that's because it's not a plastic kit list and it's an STL list. Because I think the halflings are a bit different because they've got the gastromancy as well. But I know the Zerk's got 5, I think, and the Trident Realm's got 5. Sally's got 4.
The Zerks didn't get a spell though. Salamander's got the Smolder.
Oh, true. So maybe they're looking at it. That would mean though that Trident Realm's got 6.
Lucky them.
Yeah. So maybe it's not an STL thing. Yeah.
So I don't know how much of a this is adapting old list to do this list building because like the Zerks don't actually have any characters that change locations of units, like from specialist to core or anything like that.
Maybe that's because it's all bent, CAC.
Well, it could be, yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's unbeatable, so we'll just...
Exactly.
You can just take all core anyway, right?
Well, that's the best stuff, yeah.
So I also took salamanders. I mean, one reason is I've mostly been building halfling lists, actually, but one of the guys was going to use my halflings army, so I went on to Sally's, and I took quite a different list to you, Steve. And one reason being that I'd painted a few models for our internal hobby challenge at Countercharge, so I wanted to put them on the table. So I took a Clan Lord on Fire Drake at 300 points in a 2,000 point army, a Gekatar Sky Lord, and then I was like CAC that they were my 2 inspiring choices, and like I said, I definitely felt light with those. And if I had 20 points to spare and future lists, I'm probably putting 3 in, and on one of those, particularly with something like Sally's, I'll be putting that extra command dice on one of the inspiring choices. So you've effectively got 2 warlords, sorry. And then I had 3 units of Salamander Unblooded because I was like, well, there's other expensive stuff. We need the core to be as cheap as possible. And I didn't have any Gekatar painted. A Ceremonial Guard Horde, a Tyrant's Regiment, Rhinosaur Regiment, a Lachilodon, a Gekatar Slasher, and a Phoenix. So, I had more of the big Gribblies in there. Don't know if I'd take the Phoenix again. It was okay. The Phoenix has a different role, I think, without heal. Like the Radiance of Life is nice, but what I mainly used at is waiting for the right charge where I could just charge it in and be super annoying so that unit couldn't take part in a combat that it wanted to take part in, hopefully survive, regen its way. It's one of the few things that still has regen 4. So that's its main strength. Like most of the other regens have gone back to 5. Anything else that had 4.
It didn't feel as good as it did, but it was probably too good in the last edition. It was sort of did everything, didn't it?
Yeah.
The shooting did get better if it stays still. It's hitting on a 3+ now. That's about it.
Yeah, the other thing I found is there was actually ends up still being technically, what is it? Companion tells me 36 shots in that list, but a lot of it is short range. So, I didn't find that I used the shooting a lot of the time, that particularly with the 2 inspiring choices that they were, working their way around being where they needed to be and often weren't doing a lot of heavy shooting. So, but I found it fun to play, that's for sure. I think in 2,000 points, it's just, if I was taking an optimised list, Clan Lord on Fire Drake doesn't make it in. A bit too expensive. Yeah, although did a good job against you, CAC. CAC now hates the fly special rule, isn't that right, CAC?
Like, they can just go over your units. Like, there's no punishment for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. You want something like hindered for flying over units. We had a funny moment where I thought I didn't quite play it out in my head that it would work out this well, but I knew that if I put out something, CAC forced me to put something in where I would have to charge my slasher or fire drake in. And then I was like, so I charged with my slasher and tucked my fire drake in behind, knowing it would cause some awkward repositioning, but I didn't understand really how awkward it would be. And poor CAC ended up with
the autism that you were dealing with, I think.
Yeah, exactly. You ended up with 880 points of units facing one of the sideboard edges, and then the dragon just kept jumping over you. Yeah. And so the Zakali ended up not so good when they weren't on the table,
Yeah, just forgot how fly works, as you do,
They might not have seen a fly before. I don't think the Zakali have any, do they?
No, I got no flyers.
There you go.
Just do the lions fly or not? Do they go along the ground too? Yeah, right.
No, everything's on the ground.
Because you've got the Goku or whatever it is a non-flying dragon, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Is that just because of its missing tail?
No, I think it's meant to have a tail, but still not meant to fly.
Yeah.
But because you don't have nimble and you don't have fly, it actually makes it quite awkward getting into charges.
Yeah, well, I mean we might I'll put a note about that because I think that's an interesting thing. Given that there's been a lot of movement changes to make you more manoeuvrable, but the fact that hasn't then gone on to charging, I think, is a really interesting point. But before we do that, maybe let's talk about deployment changes. Now, we didn't do the diagonal at all, but we did do the deploying long ways. And we, just because everyone was getting to grips with it, we did older scenarios. But in general, let's start with you, Steve. What do you think about the change to deployment zone options and some of the scenario changes?
I think generally more options is good if you can communicate them well. I like the short edge deployment in theory. In practice, we had a few learning experiences, I think. Well, for me in particular, we're playing on quite a large table with an area at the end where you could put all your stuff. So there was one player, which happened to be me on our first game, that ended up walking around quite a bit. So, I mean, that's just more planning ahead if you're doing it in a tournament.
You've got to win that dice roll, mate.
Yeah, I've got to just roll better.
Allocate that into the less healthy players so they get their steps up.
That's right. The other thing I found with that is needing to be a bit more careful about terrain, because often we put terrain up just for the standard deployments, which doesn't necessarily work when you're playing across the board. So you got we had quite wide lines of sight. On one game, there was a piece of impassable terrain right on the start of the deployment for one of the armies, which really hindered one person more than the other. In theory, though, I like the mix-up. It does create a different game because you've got one guy in my third game, John. He had his war machines up on a hill because we hadn't realised. The hill's now in a deployment zone, so he was very happily chipping away at the army for most of the game, and you can't really get around as easily. So I found it interesting from a short deployment. I would hesitate to put it in a larger tournament without some consideration on how large the tables are.
Yeah, and I guess that primarily being because we're on the clock as well. So, I think that's a good point. CAC, how do you find it?
Yeah, look, I quite enjoy a bit of variety, and it does present a different challenge. Again, with the terrain, we had sort of ended up with a piece of impassable in the middle, and because it's a narrower board, you sort of ended up with real split, sent half an army each side. So it made for an interesting game when we played that one game too. I think it's good, but yeah, again, generally at the bigger events, you decide map and you get a print out of the terrain with the deployment and everything probably be on it. So as long as the TOs are taking a little bit of time to match the maps to the scenarios and the deployments, I don't think it'd be an issue. pending access to table edges, that's going to be depending on space and stuff. I think generally at the Clash venue we could probably make it work, but some tighter venues may be an issue.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, the points, the table size thing will be difficult, but certainly I think I'd be making sure that probably in any tournament, not just big tournaments, that if there's a long edge, then it would be predetermined, probably randomising on the day. Yeah, or you have a separate pack of maps that are like, these are maps for longboard edges, and you make sure that if you're going to randomise on the day, that you randomise via those maps. We had a discussion, Steve, because, Nick and I hadn't read it properly, and when we set up the things, like we just played pillage 7 tokens, and in the book it actually says, if you're deploying along the short edge, we recommend D3+2. And then other scenarios didn't mention alternate deployments at all. So I think it would be nice that if they're going to mention it in one, they just mention it in all, even if it's just something as simple as, we don't recommend any changes. But also I didn't quite understand that recommendation of the D3+2, because I thought when you have different things like dwarves, I think the lowering the amount of tokens has the potential to be even more punishing, I feel, is my first thought. I don't even know if that stands up to proper reasoning, but I was like, I just don't get changing it, because I mean, I know you technically deploy the same distance apart if you wish, but with it being deeper, you can push the tokens away from your slower enemy if you want to during if you're a canny player, with how you position those tokens.
Canny player with the right list. I mean, the thing with the short edge deployment is 90% of it is like playing on a 4x4, because most people will still, line up on the deployment line, because a lot of the objectives, there's a lot of reward for getting over on the other side or getting to the middle ground. So people aren't going to, deploy right at the back, unless they've got a 48-inch war machine or something like that. It does punish slower armies potentially. If you can put things right at the back, they can't keep a token without having to sacrifice a hefty unit. But I suppose that comes into list building too. People will start making changes.
If you're a dwarf or a EOD, you want to play on a 4-foot board all day long. So
you probably deserve to be punished as well.
Well, unless somebody puts something right in the back corners that only a flyer is going to be able to get to, or if you put
that's
something
what I was
in
going
there,
to say. Yeah,
I
think it definitely advantages you if you have flyers. So if you've got flyers, your opponent doesn't. I think those deeper deployment zones, by the time the battle is joining, you might get some benefit from the dwarves because they like it clumped together in the battle line. But then if you've got fly on top of that and say nothing like surge, then I think those slower armies are having to sacrifice a bit. So, I'd be very interested. I mean, we may never find out, but what the reasoning is for lowering the token numbers in the recommendation, because I'm just not sure it's necessary.
I'm thinking it's due to be because of the less frontage, similar to having smaller games. They have less tokens. When you're playing on a 3x3 or 4x4 table, you have less tokens. So it's probably just the same logic there.
Who knows? We could end up down the track playing for 12 months, but maybe you can't put tokens in the back 12 inches or something like. There could be an adjustment down the track. Who knows?
At which point you're very close to playing on a 4x4.
Yeah, true. It makes it more like a 4x4. Yeah.
I like a variety, but you'll have the advantages and disadvantages of different armies. But
Yep. So I certainly can't. I haven't, to be honest, I haven't even properly read some of the new scenarios. I was surprised that some of the new scenarios that maybe were less liked from the end of third ed made it over into fourth. But I haven't properly read them all, to be honest, and we didn't play with them, so I probably can't comment much on the scenario changes. Do either of you have any comments on scenarios?
Well, we played a couple of the new ones. They were interesting. They're all sort of they all feel fairly similar, to be honest. Most of the scenarios are all either sort of a loot or an objective or a control, with slight variations.
I do like that that's how they're organised in the book now too, that by the defining principle of the scenario, I guess.
It makes it easier to work out, let's do a area control scenario. Okay, we'll have a look at these 3 that are all clumped together, 4.
Yeah, because I think I think particularly for tournament players, but, you'll often play those groups of scenarios in similar ways, right? So you can just go, I feel like I need to practice this list against a loot scenario, so here they are.
Then you just pick your difficulty from there if you want it to be something like loot or stockpile or something a bit more funky with fool's gold.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I guess let's move on to some of the major changes you noticed in game. I mean, for me, the first thing that stood out was some of the changes in movement. CAC, I guess, in that movement phase at first, what really stood out to you as feeling really different, if anything?
Oh, look, in the movement phase, not a real lot. Obviously, you get the extra pivots, but I didn't really notice that as changing the way you play a huge amount. There's some differences with charges. The way that you actually go into charges now, you can charge through, like 2 units making a charge can overlap each other on the way in. So that actually, you've got to get your head around how that works, but it can quite change the way you charge a significant amount. Because things like flies can just go straight across the unit and land in as long as they can contact on the corner or whatever, it's okay. So that's probably a bigger change. But yeah, look, movement felt like Kings of War, really.
Yeah, I felt movement was a lot more forgiving, having 2 pivots for non-shambling units anyway. So being able to recorrect your errors earlier in the game, and everyone having ordered march or being able to move at the double and pivot was pretty impactful. I thought.
I've been doing that for 12 months anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I've been doing that for the last 12 months anyway.
Yeah, with dwarves.
Yeah.
I found the move at the double with the pivot probably the biggest change. Like you said, Steve, I think it makes the 2 pivots makes normal movement probably just that little bit easier. Because, effectively you can sidestep your movement, right? Because you get the 2 pivots.
Although most of the time you're better off just moving to the side, moving forwards and then moving back.
Yeah. So I think that is, but I found particularly, stuff that it no longer has nimble or cav or things, being able to push them forward and spin them like Rhino Cav in my list, being able to go 14 and pivot is a big change to how I would have played them before.
It's effectively given like Dracons and Aloha nimble again, hasn't it, in the movement? You can get that 20 up and turn in sort of thing that terrifies everybody.
Yeah, which I think is the most powerful bit, right? The charge is probably somewhat the least powerful because if you've positioned properly, you'll be able to get off what you want anyway. But, yeah, I think being able to be so threatening early, and I actually think it gives a little bit of power back to first turn. I think a lot of the scenarios, I still think in a lot of the objective ones, it's probably still slightly better to go second. But it does, if you've got some quicker stuff and maybe your opponent does, it allows you to be a little bit more threatening early and maybe dictate the terms of engagement a little bit more. So I think there will be some people that consider taking first more than what they did previously.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then the next thing that stood out to me was sticky combat. And I'm in that. I guess I'm going to include reform and wraparound, and I think this is where most of the questions come up. Steve, we had a conversation of, it somewhat feels a little bit unnatural if someone's on your flank and you can't just charge forward out of combat anymore if you've got no one in front of you. And we talked about how maybe that's, in your head, it just has to be a bit more abstract. Like it wouldn't make sense that you run away from someone having a heave-ho in your side or something, that technically some of your unit would be facing them. How do we find this? Steve, let's start with you on this one. How do you get with sticky combat? Thoughts there?
Yeah, so when we're talking about just being engaged in one flank and not being able to go forwards, I found often in the games I had the old mindset, and it's going to take a while to get out of it, where, my greater fire elemental, he's just engaged in the flank. He's still free to do whatever he wants. And I'd constantly be having to go, actually, I can't do that. He's stuck here. All right, I'll reform and and face you, and then we'll deal with that first. So it is going to take a while to get used to the sticky combats. I think it's good. I think one of the things that a lot of people had issues with, myself included, are some of those gamey moves where you're engaged and then you're not, and then you're 18 inches away engaged with something else. It didn't feel right. There wasn't any downside to doing that, apart from, if you withdrew and then you took a negative to your combat the next turn. So I think it's a really positive thing overall. It's going to take a bit of getting used to, though.
Yeah, look, we've probably found that this has been the biggest single change from third to fourth for us is this sticky combats, and it changes the way the game plays more than you sort of first think. I think probably that and the shooting change. And the other thing with movement that I didn't mention before was individuals having sort of 40, 50 mil individuals turning and charging behind, and that takes a little bit of getting used to. But yeah, sticky combats really does change the way chaff works, the way you can pin things, make some of these sort of individual characters quite powerful. They can go in and just hold something where you need it. But I like the way it plays. It's pretty good, I think.
Especially fearless chaff as well, because you can't. It's either dead or it's going to get in your way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one thing that, again, there's some changes in here. Like my overall vibe of the rule set is that so much of the bad feel stuff has been taken away in a way that only the professional game designer can, and that there's just areas of tidy up that you don't first notice, like sticky combat removes the need to define disordered, right? Because you just can't fly out anyway, so you don't have to talk in fly about that you can't fly out if you're disordered and things like that. It just removes extra text that you don't need. Yeah. The one I found most unusual is that I had occasion where there was someone in my front and someone in my flank. I killed the thing in the front, but you can't reform to face the other unit. That was probably the one that still felt most weird to me. It didn't hurt me a lot because the thing that happened to be in my flank was an individual, but if it was a unit, I reckon it doesn't quite feel right. I'm like, if something's dead, wouldn't your unit still change to face it? I can see why it doesn't, but that was probably the one thing that I found felt weirdest in the changes with that sticky combat.
That's one of those reflex hobby, just being used to it, I guess, as well. After you've played it, after we've been playing for a couple of months, it'll probably feel a little bit more natural, I hope.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not necessarily thinking something that needs to be changed, but it's one of those more does that make sense kind of thing to me, Yeah.
Yep. It does give a pretty good advantage to if you can get in the flank of someone. Being engaged on both flanks, it really limits your opponent's options. It's definitely going to reward
good gameplay. Yeah.
It's not just the feel bads. It's like things like when you'd have your horde, you go in, someone to come in and 6-6 wave the unit or whatever. Before, you felt bad because you couldn't do anything. They felt bad because they didn't kill you. Now with doing these extra wounds, it probably feels better for both players, to be honest, because you've still got your unit. You can still do what you want the next turn. They feel like they've got something for it. I think everybody's probably happier. And it's removing situations with disordered and wavered. I'd hate to think how many wavereds have been forgotten over the course of 3.5 editions. And then wasn't that unit wavered? We have to try and walk it back. It just has these awkward game states that there's no need to have.
Yeah, 100%. And the whole D6 wounds is much less a feel bad than not being able to do anything, And I think, certainly, I don't know, you love it when you roll the box cars, right? And it doesn't, but I don't think you, like you said, Kak, you don't necessarily feel good about it because it's it isn't, particularly if you could only waver them on box cars. At that point, it's pure luck. It's pure luck, right?
6 wounds to it. I think I did it to you.
You did it to me. And it was at something ridiculous too.
Tell you,
I think you'd done 1 normal or 2 normal wounds, and then you did 5 extra on top from your box car.
It felt pretty good.
Yeah. And for me, like you said, it was on the ceremonial guard horde, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You charged something weekend. Yeah, which you deserved after bloody your Yan took off Rhinosaur Cav in 2 rounds of combat. Man, that was...
Yeah,
that was
probably
not
the best thing in the Carly book. I don't want you talking them up too much. They might get nerfed.
What about reform and wraparound? Did anyone have any comments on that? I think I might have had a wraparound on you once, and that flank cack with my clan lord wrapping around your dragon.
Yeah, and I did the previous game as well. I wrapped some yans around into someone's rear.
Yeah, that's definitely one for me that it doesn't immediately feel natural. So like you had mentioned, Steve, with the other stuff, it's one of those gameplay states that you're going to have to get used to looking out for.
It's effectively the same. You just would have declared a fresh charge last edition.
Yeah,
at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. You know, that's a good point. Yep. Did you have much interaction with wraparound or anything, Steve?
Yeah, only once or twice. The main thing was it was a question. I think it was in the third game with John. We were talking about how the reform works. If you can choose to halt first before another unit charges in, or does it need to reform? So we had a few chats about what would work, and we played it as if you can choose. But I mean, we're all still getting used to the rules.
Yeah.
But we didn't play with many wraparounds.
No, well, and it comes back to one of those things that'll probably in the end reward better gameplay in the end. For example, if I was against one of your fire elementals, Steve, and I charged 2 regular sized units into it, knowing you were unlikely to kill me on the turn back or had anything else that was in range, then I've charged those 2 units in knowing I can wrap around the turn after.
Yeah.
So I think it is going to reward those people that can look a turn ahead. Which is usually not me, to be honest.
Yeah, well, even if I was to kill one, I wouldn't be able to reform completely.
Yeah, because when you're reforming, well, I think that was the other thing.
Reforming, yeah,
because we're reforming now because there's 2 units in. You don't slide across to one, right? You're stuck in between them, and it's just a matter of where you allocate your attacks. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the defense to that is to make sure you've got a second line. As
100%.
Many things in Kings of War. So something else. I mean, I threw our tackle in one game just into combat, just to make sure that there wasn't a wraparound on. Oh yeah, exactly that. A greater fire elemental. So, I mean, there's plays and counter plays still, which is good, but it's definitely puts you on the back foot when you're having to throw our tackle into combat.
Which is exactly how you use your Yan, right, CAC at the moment. It's that second line. So, I mean, more often than not, you're using it in multiple ways, but that's where they're effective, is that second line of, coming in afterwards.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And they're always looking for the reach around, wrap around.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I was about to say I'm a big advocate for changing the name to reach around.
I'll be saying it.
Yeah. What about, speaking of reach arounds, what about withdraw? Did anyone have any experience of that during their 3 games?
We had it once. Someone withdrew, bounced through their unit, ended up safe behind. And yeah, look, it seems fine. It seems to work how you would expect it to work. I think it's an interesting rule. I like the idea that you've got to take a test on it, but sometimes you want that unit out of the way. You're willing to take that risk, and you sort of want them to die. So, I think it's good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the new role of chaff, right? Your opponent might not be killer, but you might be like, well, if it dies, I don't care.
Yeah.
Did you have any, Steve?
Yeah, I had one moment with Zaki, ended up getting into combat by accident. Well, I put him in, but didn't want him to be in. And I think he passed the nerve check, and I needed to roll a 5 to get him to not be wavered and be able to shoot his fireball. Ended up rolling a 4. So he was feeling a little bit like a dunce after that, wavering and not being able to contribute anything. But yeah, he was wavered because he ended up going through one of the units that was right behind him. So that was that was good. I mean, he was alive, he was out of combat, he was useless for a turn, but it did definitely open up the options. So it's much better than, if he'd wavered and was just useless for a turn.
Yeah, 100%. Well, yeah.
Stuck in like cavalry and been able to run and then charge again and shoot again. Like some interesting play with all that. I haven't really looked into any of that, but
Did anyone come across anything that had feint during the 3 games? I don't think I did.
A lot of things with feint are the more tricksy units that don't have much nerve, and I for one, wasn't game enough to. Well,
no, and then often if you're taking them in, there's also taking them in a troop version. There's often like that points handicap. So at the 2,000 points, you're probably, not as likely to take it. I did it once across 3 games, and it was the Phoenix, deliberately charging into something I wanted to hold up that I knew wouldn't kill it back. And then the good thing about regen is you roll it after you declared. So I think the Phoenix was on 7 wounds, and I'm like, well, it's 11 to die. I'm going to regen a couple of these, so it's really unlikely, to be a problem. And so declared it, regened a lot off, and then, the nerve roll was basically going to be fine. And then I could get 2 other units in. So, I mean, I think that's going to be its main use is holding up charges and then getting the things you want into combat, right? So, and I think that's one of those things. I still don't know if it feels completely natural to a new player. It's definitely going to be one of those rules that, people just have to learn. But I think it definitely feels less bad than the, I'm going to withdraw so I can charge this unit off into something else.
I think it's an interesting rule. I came to see it. Probably as the meta develops more, you'll see that sort of stuff develop a bit more as people work out what's going on and how they can utilise this sort of faster chaff and different things.
Mm.
Probably the first few games everyone's playing, it's just probably playing the simpler units. Just
and I think, this goes back to list design. I think the initial swing is going to be right away from shooting, and then we'll see it come back. A bit. Probably not as much as shooting heavy as, not that we had much of that in Australia anyway, because we're good blokes or good people, so, I certainly think there's still a role for heavy shooting with maybe lots of auxiliary or something, to just do the final wounds to pop things off after you've softened them up. But
and look, some of those war machines have got pretty good just quietly. I think dwarf cannons now are going to be hitting on 4s. You've got the 3 shots on the abyssal heavy mortars. There's a few scary things out there.
And they can score too.
Yeah, that was my biggest. I've put it in at the end, but we can talk about it now. So first game of the tournament, which was my second game of 4th, that completely got me. I did not remember that the individuals in the war machine scored and we were playing control. And then it was just as about in my head, I was doing the math for my last turn, and I said to him, "Oh, mate, you've won this. I just have not accounted for your war machines and individuals." So that's a bit of a difference. I think we had a bit of a chat about it, Steve. Is that it does make them a lot more powerful, given they're not overly expensive. I mean, they're still not putting out a whole heap of hurt. I did wonder about tweaks, things like, can you tie something to the indirect rule that so if something else is really close to it with equal unit strength, it cancels it out? Because it does feel a bit weird that it could outscore something else of like most of the other unit strength stuff, which are often troops of things of 1, right? It feels a bit weird to outscore that. But, it was certainly a change that you have to get used to.
Should just kill it. They still triple attacks, don't they?
Yeah, just kill it. Yeah.
Got to get to them first. But, it does feel a little bit strange that, a couple of cannon crew are willing to fight with a troop that's actually been fighting over an objective. To me, it feels like they'd just kind of go, "Yep, okay, it's yours. We're not going to fight you for it."
Yeah. Yeah. So, I certainly think nothing like that. Well, I don't think it will, and it probably shouldn't be changed too quickly until we see how it plays out. But I think that could be an option on the table if it was, seeming like that it was problematic. But the other thing is a lot of the war machines are support. Yeah, exactly. Well, the negative against them is that they're in support, right? So, and particularly at the lower points where you're not unlocking a lot of support, you're sacrificing if you're taking a war machine. Yeah. So I think you've got to have an exceptional specialist category stuff if you're going to sacrifice to take war machines as your support options is my feel.
I've considered in the Zerks running a couple of the mortars and one of the rockets or something.
I started with it with my first Trident Realms list with a couple of Leviathans, Banes, because they're also cheap, and I think a couple of cheap drops is good too, because I still like more drops rather than less, but then when your other options are things like a Kraken, which has Rampage 8, I'm like, well, I think I prefer the Kraken.
Yeah, depends on the army you're taking as well.
Yeah.
It's like I was playing John in the third game, and he had a couple of ballistas, and they were very effective. And I don't think elves struggled too much with the support. He didn't seem to anyway. So, yeah, I guess it depends on how competitive that area is for each list.
That's true, and you might find, like similar to last edition, that the ones that do better at it are your trash armies, like your goblins and your Atkins, that can just put enough cheap core and stuff down to unlock plenty of support options. So, we'll see. What about 2 into the facing? Did you find that changed things much for you, Cac? Either in how you approached it or in practice?
Sorry, I didn't catch what you said.
Just only being able to have 2 into one facing, 2 units into one facing when you charge.
Oh, not really. Again, my army's relatively elite. I didn't have that many spare units to be charging into things, so 2 normally was enough. But again, I'm not playing with hordes. I'm not playing with lots of cheap units. So, yeah, it didn't really come up in my game so much.
Yeah, it didn't come up in my games either. I think when you're playing at 2,000 points, which is most of the time less than it used to be in 3.5, I think I think I might have had one time where I had 3 units that could charge and I had to choose 2 of them, but it didn't really impact very much.
No, I found it probably changed my thinking more on the defensive side rather than the offensive side. So with something like my Ceremonial Guard Horde, I was very aware of, I can position between those 2 because they're no chance of going through me, because or there might be 4 units there and I know that any combination of the 2 won't go through me in one turn. So I think it changed my thinking, more on that defensive side, because I think, in third, if you're doing more than 2 in one facing, you always knew there was a risk there anyway, right? So you were probably always calculating, is that really necessary?
And a lot of time you charge a third unit to be just a character or something that was going in to do an extra wound or 2. Like it wasn't often you getting 3 combat units into a combat.
No, 100%. And so, I think from the attacking point of view, I think it certainly changes it if you're thinking about things like how it then interacts with wraparound and things like that. It probably changes whether you think about maybe doing 2 instead of 1, for the opportunities in future turns. But maybe not.
Where it's come up. If you had unlimited charges in, you could do a character in between 2 units and then force the double wraparound next turn and things like that.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, it would make some of those other things more likely, wouldn't it? So, maybe that's one of the reasons they did it as well, for sure. Yep. Nerf tests. So things like, again, this was another great example for me of professional game designer coming back in, even though the 2 nerf values came from Alessio originally, of just looking at it and going, why do we need to? I think it's a nice simplification, but did you find it affected you at all? And we've briefly touched on things like the boxcars, CAC, but and then the exceptional results. So, how do you find that, Steve? Start with you.
Sure. No, I love it. I still find myself saying it's got nerve dash something or other, and catching myself afterwards. But I think simple. If it doesn't need to be complicated, then keep it simple. I like the clarity that it brings. I don't think having the 2 values, looking back now, really added that much, apart from one of the things I didn't like previously was the lack of choice. If your unit's wavering in combat, you say, okay, it's wavering in combat and there's nothing I can do about it. But there's more choices now. So if it's wavering, it means it's been shot or it's tried to withdraw and hit something. But if it's in combat, it's not doing nothing. It's contributing somehow. So yeah, I'm a fan of the change.
Yeah, look, I'd like it too. The only thing I've really noticed with it is like the change to things like the yarn trips, like these little berserker trips and things that used to be 11, 13 and they'd get shot twice and waver and not do anything. Whereas now all of a sudden, well, you've got to shoot that thing, you've got to do 13 wounds to take it off because it's fearless, it keeps coming at you. So I feel like a lot of these little troops are going to see a lot more play. I know all the lists we're writing in our play group quite often have a couple of troops or something in there that before you would have had to have been really, really careful with. Whereas now they're a bit more versatile, a bit more usable.
And that's reflected in the points now, isn't it? Because they're a bit more expensive. Just troops, auxiliary, they're a bit more expensive than they used to be, for the most part.
One thing that, again, I think improved the feel good is the boxcar and shooting. So I had this, someone did a couple of wounds. Actually, it was against my fire drake that had got into their back lines. Not you, Cac, against Mike Douglas. The fire drake had got over the lines. They managed, and I knew they were shooting there, but they managed to do 2 wounds. I think it was like the first 2 wounds or something, and then they boxcarred. And I was like, oh man, that's just, I'm just about to destroy his lines. But different to the 3rd and 4th is you get a reroll on that. So, for inspiring. So, that eliminated the real, if someone rolls boxcars twice, good luck to them, but getting that reroll, I think, was another good change to eliminate some of that feel bad. And then, we touched on CAC, the extra D6 wounds is certainly a lot better feel than, just being able to have to stand there and do nothing for a round of combat.
Yeah, I like it. It's abstract. You can imagine a few of the blokes are making a run for it. They've given up the ghost, but the line's still held. Like it's cool.
Yeah, and then I guess the next thing I had down different that was that, one, compared to the end of 3rd where it was command dice, we've now just got commands that have dice as part of the mechanic, but they're not command dice. How did we find the introduction of commands? Cac, let's start with you.
Yeah, look, when I first read the Kali commands, I thought, oh, these are all incredible. Like, this is going to be so good. And in play, they're good, but they end up being more situational than you sort of at first think. So, like, the TC one is seems like it's just going to be incredible, but it doesn't get off that often because of the way combat works now. Everything's more sticky. You're running phalanx units, people are charging you a lot of the time. You're not getting it off that often, but it's fantastic when you do. Heal's a good default one. The fast Yan one is fantastic, so you can give Yans extra speed. I think in our game we had a situation where if I would have rolled 3 hits on that, the Yans could have got a flank on the ceremonial guard.
Yep.
It's like that was a cool situational one that could only come up a couple of times, but I like the threat of the fast Yans. But yeah, no, they're good, but they don't feel very overpowered. I'd trade them all for a Bane Chant, that's for sure.
How did you find command, Steve?
Yeah, I'm very aware that we're all played with some of the more fleshed out lists with more command orders. So not all the armies have 4 or 5 or 6 commands yet. As a mechanic, I love it. I think it adds flavour. It makes it so that your champions, your warlord, are actually. It feels like they're contributing something beyond, a few wounds here and there or buffing the rest of your army. They're actually doing a bit more, which I appreciate. Gameplay wise, with the salamanders, I do find that I'm doing a lot more than others. So there was a few games where, I didn't want to give life leech. I didn't want to give a fireball, or I couldn't give a fireball, couldn't give extra speed. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to try and give it +1 defense. And so I literally had all 3 of my heroes just trying the same command over and over and failing more often than not. But, sometimes it works and you get a defense 6 greater fire elemental. So I found some commands a little bit more useful more often. I've also played a bit of the Ratkin as well, and they've got one really amazing one and one that's kind of like, oh yeah, that's all right. Strider on your trash units, but the other one, the old plague pots one, where they get ensnare, is brilliant. So it really depends on the army how much you can make use of it. But over the tournament, I thought the salamanders were pretty good, with often wasting a lot of command dice trying to get the most difficult one through.
Yeah, I felt the same. I felt like the +1 defense in salamanders was clearly the best, so you'd try and get it off. Even with my champion, I would try, and I think half the time it wouldn't on the 3 dice. So I like the idea of, on some of those better ones, needing something like 2 successes. I think that's a good way to moderate it a little bit. I think the commands are still the things that are probably the most likely thing to catch out new players until they've played games, or irregular players, if they're not being really alert to what's on value, what's on offer, sorry. I mean, they're definitely been inequitable. Looking at the Trident Realms list, like theirs on average are much more useful than, say, even the salamanders. Like I think most of the other salamanders are like, meh. If you're getting 1 dice success and you're getting Fireball 3, who cares? If you're getting Life Leech 1, who cares? I think they're not that useful compared to +1 defense. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting how it plays out. I mean, I said at the start that I think the really good players could play without commands and still win, because it is still a movement game. So but I do like that it brings a little bit of unpredictability. Some of the really, I think that'll be one of the big pushbacks from the tournament players, is that the ones that are really into it, and want everything to be super predictable, they won't like that. But I think, I personally don't want everything to be super predictable.
Gives them a lot of space to go to. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you see characters come in later on, special characters with their own command abilities and things like that, like having Firefight. Gives them a lot of room to grow, I think.
Yeah. And there's items which you can make it easier to get commands off if people are really keen to have the consistency. So, +1 dice to the commands that you're issuing. I was also going to say on the commands, I have noticed that I think there's going to be more people playing with more tokens now. So I found struggling to remember, which unit has Life Leech, which unit has +1 defense. I can't necessarily keep all that in my mind when it actually comes to my opponent's combat phase the next turn. So I'm going to put some tokens together, and I wouldn't be surprised if many other players do that as well. So I think there's going to be more tokens on the board because of those commands, especially the sticky ones that you need to remember a turn and a half ahead.
You've got less with Wavered and Disordered.
Yep. Yeah, true.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, was there anything else that stood out from the games from you guys that you think are worthy of discussion from your first few games of 4th?
Yeah, for me, there was one time where one of my opponents could have knocked out two of my damaged units with just the one ogre character, just because he could split the attacks. I thought that was kind of cool. Didn't quite work, but he could have done it if the dice had gone his way. So being able to split the attacks multiple ways was relevant in one of the games I played.
I played too much in the old game where it's almost always a mistake to split your attacks. You just, if something's got to go, you make sure it dies.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely didn't have an occasion of where I thought by splitting them that, I was guaranteed of being impactful enough on both units. So I didn't split attacks into any of my 3 games. But I mean, there'll obviously be scenarios where it is worth a bit of a risk, But I think that's a good change too, and just, from a cinematic point of view, feels sensible.
Putting that one attack out there to try and force a nerve check or something on another unit, it'll make for some cool stories, that's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, you can just imagine like something with super low attacks just managing to take out two units at once or something like that.
The wizard goes in and pops 2 units or something there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was a good one. I think, it's going to be really interesting to see how list building plays out. I would be very surprised and I think somewhat disappointed if they made big changes in the next update book to how things went, because I personally think there won't be enough data, except for the stuff that's obvious mistakes. I have had someone bring up with me, are you doing an FAQ for Clash? But I'm like, well, without official answers, I don't think we can have that. I'll just have to make decisions on the day. But one thing like being, are you wavered with a fearless unit when you pop back through a unit on a withdraw? Because technically fearless says on a nerve check. But I think, my read of it is I think that fearless should basically just say you can't be wavered. But I think that's the most sensible interpretation, but I could see why people would think otherwise.
Make some big calls, mate. That's why you're on the big bucks.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be somewhat disappointed, I think, if there were big changes. But I think my gut feel and the overwhelming was that we have got a better game on our hands, and a cleaner game. I think from a game that was already pretty clean, but I think it just become, a little messy because of some of the mechanics, some of which were original mechanics, like keeping an inch away and things like that. That's something we didn't talk about. I don't think it was that relevant in any of my games, but, it was not having to keep an inch away relevant in either of your games.
It was nice not to have to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it come up once or twice, but it wasn't ever sort of a big issue.
I think you're right, Matt, that the game, that the core mechanic, there's a lot of cleaner mechanics, and that's fantastic. Shooting, sticky combats. There's a lot of things that are cleaner and more streamlined, but the game also has room to grow as well. More things to tweak, more levers to pull if needed. So I can see how the game can grow from the start of 4th.
Yeah, that's one of the only comments we'd say is like, get out there and play the game, but what we've got is a fantastic game at the start of its life cycle. Like it's a game that's got so much room to grow on. It's a really good core of a game, and I'm really excited to see where it comes with these books coming through and start seeing how they develop it. But we're really happy. We're keen to get some more games in.
Yeah, there's all this trash on mechanics saying, they can do this, and like none of it is actually being backed up with, I did this in a game. You know what? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think people just have to.
Characters are overcosted, characters are unplayable, or too expensive. It's like, well, first game we played, we're like, hang on, this character's inspiring, he's casting magic, he's doing a command, he's scoring, he's chaffing. Like, characters are really good.
Yeah,
that's the reason they're costed the way they are.
100%. And I think, if I could sum up how some of the changes, particularly with the feel good or bad things, is it's kind of gone to now things like you would say, you can't do that, rather than, oh, you can do that? do you know what I mean? And I think that's a good thing for the feel of the game. And I think that's overall what it feels like now, No, so it's just, it is even tidier, which I just think is great. And there's always going to be questions, and there's going to be things not worded perfectly, and that'll get fixed up.
I did find that there was a few times over the day in the tournament, we're looking up a particular question, and in the book it says, okay, in this scenario, do exactly this. Great, perfect, no further questions. So they have obviously been thinking through some of the main things that are going to happen.
Something and it's like, oh, you thought of that exact situation.
Yeah,
100%. I don't think there's that much, and I think people look hard to find an issue, don't they? Like, seriously. And so much is opinion based. Oh, I believe there should be a comma here or whatever. Like, just, honestly, go find something better to do with your time.
Are we worrying about commas now, are we?
Yeah, Christ.
I think Alessio has done a fantastic job, and whatever they're paying him, it's worth every penny.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, anything to add before we wrap up, my lads? No?
No, it's looking good.
Visit a tournament soon.
Yeah, we should mention that, Steve again was the king of Canberra. I think, he took out the tournament with 3 wins.
Only because I didn't have to play either of you guys, right?
Yeah. Well, little secret, I tabled CAC.
Yeah, that was a paddling.
That helped me race back to second.
Myself, to be fair, mate.
That result, you did, mate. Yeah, I think without that flank going that way, where you're facing the board edge, I just don't. It doesn't go. The game would not have looked like that.
The Yarns won the other flank by themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And although Stephen could have some competition because we had a local that internationally some people would know, Mr. Charles Black, turned up and looked interested in restarting a bit of love affair with Kings. So, he could be a good adversary for Stephen, where the rest of us aren't sometimes. So I think I'm seeing a lot of new blood vibes, in between the trash on Fanatics. I'm seeing a lot of new blood vibes of people interested in the game. Sorry?
I wouldn't call Chuck new blood.
No, true. I'm not throwing him in there,
Might be more competition for Tracy.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of a salamander ancient, But certainly on across various pages, I think it's the whatever it is about a new edition is drawing a few people back to have a look again. So I think that's a good thing. All right, well, lads, thanks for giving up your time tonight. Good luck with your further endeavours. CAC, you've got 3 weeks to paint a whole Zakali army before Clash of Kings, and
mate, I've got to paint up more than halfway through it now.
Nice, impress the run dog. I think we've got plenty of Mantic armies coming. If anyone's interested in Clash, please reach out. If you're not sure what to do or haven't got an army, we've got sheds full of armies that we can loan people. So, we can help you out there. And I hope you all enjoyed our little dive into fourth after the world's first, 4th edition tournament. And until next time, keep countercharging.
Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time on Countercharge. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at counterchargepodcast@gmail.com, on Twitter @countercharge15, or by commenting on the Countercharge Kings of War podcast Facebook group. If you enjoy the show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Until next time, keep countercharging. Music is a composition of Kevin MacLeod and is licensed under Creative Commons.